Welcome to the Private School Leader Podcast, where private school leaders learn how to thrive and not just survive as they serve and lead their schools. I strongly believe that it is possible to have a long and happy and fulfilling career as a private school leader. And my passion is to help you figure out exactly how to do just that, right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And I'm your host, Mark Minkus. So I want to start today's episode with kind of a really strange question. And this is it. This is the question. If you could pick any superpower that you would have for the rest of your life, which one would it be? If you could pick any superpower. And, you know, I did a search on this, and when they asked people this question, in order, here are the top 10. Invisibility, teleportation, mind reading, super strength, time travel, regeneration, flight, super intelligence, super speed, and telekinesis. So I don't know if I named the superpower that you would pick, but for me, I think I would pick teleportation. And just the idea of being in a meeting that I don't want to be in, and then I could teleport to a beach, that sounds pretty amazing. And so sometimes as private school leaders, we get ourselves into situations where we're in a meeting or in a situation where we just wish we could teleport out of there. And if we end up on a beach, all the better. So if you could pick a superpower, which one would it be? Well, on today's episode, what I want to do is to help you see how you can turn encouragement into your superpower. And the way we're going to do that is there's a book written by Jordan Montgomery that's called The Art of Encouragement: How to Lead Teams, Spread Love, and Serve from the Heart. And we're going to take a look at some of the key principles, the key takeaways from this book, and apply it to you specifically as a private school leader. And so on today's episode of the Private School Leader Podcast, we're going to talk about how to turn encouragement into your superpower. And before we jump into that, you know, if you're listening to this in real time, it's near the end of the year. And when we come to the end of a year, we typically look back and we look forward. We kind of reflect on the first half of the school year that started back in August. And we think about the second half of the school year. And then we also think about New Year's Day and New Year's resolutions, and this is the year that we're going to blank. Well, I want to help you fill in that blank. And there's really two ways that I want to help you, because I want to help you have a better second half of your school year than you did the first half. And I want to set you up to be built to last, and I want to help you have that long and happy and fulfilling career that I'm always talking about. And so there's two things that you can check out. One is Thrive Academy. It's an online digital course that will take you step by step, strategy by strategy through everything that I've learned over my 33-year career. And I've packaged it for you into 7 modules and 29 lessons and a printable workbook. And it's asynchronous work. And then there's also office hours once a week where you can connect with other leaders. And Thrive Academy students, there are dozens of them, and they are just, they're changing themselves. They're changing their schools. And this is something that could be a big deal, a game changer for you. And so find out more about that at theprivateschoolleader.com/thrive. And that's a way that you could change the script, that you could fill in the blank for the second half of the school year. But another way is also to consider one-on-one coaching with me. I would love to work with you. And again, you can go to theprivateschoolleader.com/coaching, and you could set up a free 20-minute Zoom. It's free. It's 20 minutes. You talk, I listen, and I listen to what is the biggest problem, what's your biggest dream. And then we talk a little bit about what coaching is all about. And so, theprivateschoolleader.com/coaching, theprivateschoolleader.com/thrive. There are two ways where you could take a step, an important step, to make sure that the second half of this school year is better than the first half, and also to make yourself built to last and have that long and happy and fulfilling career as a private school leader. And then I also want to give you a free gift. This is called The 6 Things That Every Private School Teacher Wants from Their Leader. And it's a 6-page PDF that I believe can be a game changer for you. And I guarantee that if you do these 6 things, that the teachers at your school will be happy to follow you. And so you can get that at theprivateschoolleader.com/guide. The 6 things that every private school teacher wants from their leader. Theprivateschoolleader.com/guide, that's free, just as a thank you for listening to the podcast. All right. So we're going to talk about 7 ways to turn encouragement into your superpower. And I'm going to run them down, and then we're going to talk briefly about each one, and I'll give an example of how you can implement that at school with your team. And also, I'll take good care of you in the show notes as usual at theprivateschoolleader.com/episode 114, so that you can just listen. A list of 7 things, that's a lot to remember. So just check out the show notes. All right. 7 ways to turn encouragement into your superpower. Number 1, encourage with authenticity. Number 2, create a culture of appreciation. Number 3, encourage effort over perfection. Number 4, be a source of support during the tough times. Number 5, lead by example. Number 6, foster strong relationships based on trust. And number 7 is encourage self-compassion. And I told you at the top of the episode that we're kind of breaking down this book, The Art of Encouragement by Jordan Montgomery, and then applying them to you and your team at your school. And so number 1 is encourage with authenticity. And this is really a core message of the book, that there is such a thing as authentic encouragement. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But, sometimes we give compliments, sometimes we give those pats on the back, sometimes we say, good job, or we say thanks, but authentic encouragement is about sincerity, and it's about noticing, it's about being specific, it's about acknowledging that effort in unique ways and consistently, and it is encouragement that comes from your heart. And so this isn't something that's rote. This isn't something that's perfunctory. This isn't something that is just, we do it and we move on. This is something that comes from the heart. It's authentic. And so a couple of examples, instead of just saying great job, we can specify exactly what impressed you about the thing that the teacher did or the team member did. And so, does that take more effort? Yes. Are we busy? Yes. Is it difficult to find the time to give authentic encouragement and to be specific? Yes. But it is a super important thing if you want to be an excellent leader that people trust. If you want to lead your school and elevate your school, I really believe that encouragement is like that quote, "A rising tide lifts all boats." That encouragement, creating a culture of encouragement in your school, starting with you at the top, can be transformational for your school culture. And so, the things that you're expressing appreciation for and that you're encouraging them about, it could be they're trying something new with their teaching, or the extra time after class that you see them, working with a student or out in the hall, or just even the positive vibe that they have in the classroom, and that you just really appreciate how much fun the kids have in that class. And that authenticity coming through in your praise, with it being specific and heartfelt, it can make your team feel truly appreciated, as opposed to just, what I'm talking about because it's happened to you before. So if you're a division head, maybe it came from your head of school. If you're a head of school, maybe it's come from your board, where it just seems like it's the authentic praise and the encouragement is kind of feels like it's few and far between. And then sometimes it just feels like it's rote or it's just going through the motions. And so we're not going to do that with our teams. We are going to lead with the heart. We're going to give that authentic and specific praise and encouragement, and we're going to try and do it as often as possible. And it's highly motivating, and it's highly appreciated by your team that receives it. Okay, so then on to number 2. We are going to try to create a culture of appreciation. And so in his book, The Art of Encouragement, Jordan Montgomery, he also talks about the importance of creating a culture where encouragement is woven into the fabric of your organization, of your school. And so I mentioned that a little bit in number 1. And so there's some overlap between number 1 and number 2. But we know that as school leaders, it's our responsibility to create the culture. We are the culture creators and sustainers and protectors. And so it's your responsibility as the leader of your school or your division to create an environment where appreciation and encouragement is just a part of the daily routine. It's just a thing that we do. And I remember at my school, several years ago, we introduced mindfulness. And there were some people who were trained in that, some teachers, and just their consistency in presenting it and modeling it and doing it in the classrooms and creating some lessons and some activities around it and doing it during the religious services, and it just became part of the circulatory system of our school. It became part of our culture. But I remember at the beginning thinking, well, this is just kind of like, I don't know, a Band-Aid or just something that isn't going to stick around. It's sort of a flavor of the month kind of thing that we're going to do for a while and then not do anymore. But mindfulness became a part of our culture. And it was because of that consistency and that determination that it did. And so we want encouragement to be part of our culture at our schools. And so this is true about your teachers, but it's also true about your students and staff and even parents, expressing that appreciation. And so it's not easy to do. But there can be, how do we show, so I'll just jump to the example and keep things moving here. So how do we try to create a culture of appreciation? Well, I think that recognition is a big part of that. And so if you have a daily memo or a weekly memo with the shout outs, some of our schools are religious schools, and once a week or so we're getting together for chapel or mass or tefillah in a Jewish day school, or assemblies. Those are great times for shout outs about the teachers from you or even from the kids. Thank you notes, the handwritten note, I'm a big fan of that. And, these things do take time, and I'm not saying you're writing notes all the time for every staff member, but that regular recognition helps to create a culture of appreciation. And here's the thing, when appreciation just starts to become part of your culture, it just builds such a strong sense of community. And I also have seen that it motivates others to contribute more and to really do their best. And so it's not going to motivate everyone, but what you're trying to do, you've got your rock stars, and then you've got your fence sitters, and then you've got your teachers that are kind of just stuck. They're just kind of doing what they need to do to get the paycheck. Well, what I've seen is that if you create a culture of appreciation and encouragement and recognition, that the fence sitters tend to follow the rock stars. And then the ones that are stuck, the ones that are kind of doing the minimum, they become marginalized, which is what you want. You don't want them to become the critical mass in your school's culture. And so this is something that can actually move the needle. I've seen it, and I know that it can happen at your school as well. Okay, so we're talking about the 7 strategies, the 7 ways to turn encouragement into your superpower. And we're up to number 3, which is encourage effort over perfection. And so, again, in the Art of Encouragement book that we're talking about today, the author, Montgomery, he talks about how true encouragement, quote, true encouragement is about valuing effort rather than perfection. So we get that. And as school leaders, we have to recognize that we have different people, that different types of personalities in the teachers that we're leading, in the staff that we're leading. And we can't expect perfection. Schools are messy. Schools are emotional places. Schools are complex places. And there's going to be things where, that the buses come late because of traffic, and then someone has to stay late. Or there's going to be, someone forgot to put that thing in the memo, and now there's an early dismissal. And it's like, I didn't know about that. I had planned a test for that period. And so there's going to be things that are messy. And so we can't have the standard be perfection. We just want the standard to be the hard work, and just to try and to value the effort and the hard work of our teachers rather than focus so much on outcomes. And I get it. Outcomes are important as far as test scores and, things that are tangible and the metrics that we can measure. But let's face it, so much of what goes on in our schools is difficult to measure. And so we want to model that growth mindset. And, if you want to go back and check out episode 4, how to turn pedestal kids into gritty kids by implementing growth mindset at your school. That's an episode that gets downloaded a lot, even more than 2 years later since it was put up. But growth mindset at your school can be a huge game changer. It certainly was at our school. It changed a lot of lives, not just the kids, but the teachers as well. And so, we're talking about showing appreciation and giving encouragement. How does this go together with what I just said about focusing on effort over perfection? Well, I think that when teachers are trying something, when they're getting out of their comfort zone, they're trying a new teaching method, or they're trying a new lesson, is to really heap the praise on about their courage to experiment. Because anytime someone's getting out of their comfort zone, it's so good for them. It's so good for our schools, but we need to notice it and acknowledge it and recognize it. And then they'll also feel more comfortable in taking those risks and trying those things. Do you want your teachers to just run it back every year, year after year with the same lessons, and, multiplied by X number of years that they work at your school? Of course, the answer is no. And so, if they're worried that they're going to get their hands smacked because a lesson doesn't go well, or their room gets too loud because they're doing a group activity and they get dinged for that, we have to try and encourage those things when they try something different. And then for our students, of course, we're going to focus on progress. We're going to focus on the process. We're going to give that process praise. We're not going to praise them for their grades or for their intelligence. And so just this shift in focus for us, we can model that growth mindset, and then our teachers are going to feel more empowered to take risks. And then maybe they will do things, innovation, okay, is not always comfortable. And if we want our teachers to be continuing to do best practice and stay on the cutting edge of what's out there, and to be curious and to try things, then not only do we have to model that, but we have to support them when they try it and maybe when things don't go all that well. All right, on to number 4. Number 4, how are we going to turn encouragement into a superpower for you and your school? Number 4, you're going to be a source of support during tough times. So this one's pretty straightforward. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but encouragement is not just for the good times. It's easier to encourage people during the good times, but it's especially important when things are not going well at our school. And so some of you have already started to think about COVID. And, that year or 2 years that were so tough when we were doing school in person, and it was such a challenge and it took so much out of you, that's when the teachers needed encouragement the most. And I know what you're thinking. When I think back on it, it's like, yeah, we encouraged them, and then they were still mad, or they still felt like we were, not doing enough for them and stuff like that. And there were a lot of things going on there. A lot of people were scared to come to work. we were basically doing something that was the impossible, and then it became the norm. And so, we've learned lessons from that, but there are going to be other tough times in our schools, and it might be that the school is facing a tough time, or it might be that that individual teacher or employee is facing a tough time. And so we're just aware. That's the thing, is to be aware and to have empathy, to try and view it through their eyes, to try to help manage the stress, to try and be flexible. A lot of my teachers, they're at the point where they're starting, their elderly parents their needs are increasing. And the flexibility that sometimes they might need becomes an issue. And so we just want to try. Of course, it's hard because we're exhausted. We're stressed out more than usual if times aren't going well at school, if there's some challenge that's facing the school. But that's when we need to really be encouraging others the most. And so, again, empathy, reminding yourself and reminding your teachers that these setbacks are all part of a school year, part of a journey, and then to try to help them stay focused on the vision and mission of the school, and to reaffirm to your teachers how much value they add, how much of a difference they're making. The more you can reconnect a teacher to their core, their compelling why, that's all the way back in episode 1, but their compelling why of why they're doing this. If we can connect them with that, they're going to be more encouraged during the tough times. And then the last thing on this point is that we want to give support and optimism, but not toxic positivity. And I'll link that. I did an episode on that. I'll link that in the show notes. But again, we want to be optimists. We want to be like, okay, we're going to get through this, and then lead by example, and then do the work necessary to get everyone through whatever this is. But we're not going to be toxic positivity, and the Titanic is slipping beneath the surface and we're running around saying everything's fine. That's not credible, and we're not going to do that. Okay, so we're going to be a source of support during tough times. All right, so we're talking about the 7 ways to turn encouragement into your superpower. Number 1, encourage with authenticity. Number 2, create a culture of appreciation. Number 3, encourage effort over perfection. Number 4, be a source of support during tough times. And number 5, lead by example with positive language. So let me explain what I mean by that. We have to lead by example all the time. But the way that I speak to my team, the way that I speak to students, sets the tone for my entire division or for the entire school if you're head of school. And the positive language can lift people up, it can lift the culture, and negative language can tear everything down. And so we want to be, I'll throw optimism in there again from last point, but we want to make sure that our language is encouraging growth. It fosters hope. Instead of, going along, the easiest thing to do is to complain. The easiest thing to do is when we're exhausted and we actually don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, is to just be like, oh, I don't know. I don't think we can fix this. And even if that's on the inside and you're not saying it on the outside, it's really hard for our body language not to be screaming that messaging. And so sometimes we have to earn our Academy Award. And the tougher the times are, the more we have to earn that Academy Award. But this is something where they're looking to us as the leader. And if they see that we are worried and that we are stressed and that we don't think that we can win, then we're not going to win. We're not going to conquer whatever this challenge is. And I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of Tom Brady. But I do think about sometimes that Super Bowl when they were down, 28-3 in the third quarter to the Atlanta Falcons. And every time that Brady came back to the huddle, that team believed in him, that they still had a chance to win and that they were going to win, and they did win. And so I'm not saying that that works all the time, but I am saying that the example that we set and our attitude and our mindset and the language that we use and our words and our body language, all of those things work together to send a message, and we have to think about the message that we're sending. And then that messaging can shape culture. And so to bring it all the way back to encouragement, if our language is encouraging and affirming and expressing sincere and authentic appreciation, then it's going to start to inspire that same kind of behavior in others. You know, when you see how your teachers are treating each other, sometimes when you see how teachers are treating the students, sometimes that goes back to how the leader is treating the teachers. And so we want to set that example, and we want to raise the whole thing. We want to raise the bar. All right. Okay, just two more. Number 6 is foster strong relationships based on trust. And you know, if you've listened to the podcast for any length of time, how important it is to me, integrity and telling the truth and building strong relationships based on trust. And here's the thing, encouragement thrives in environments of trust. So just think about things that thrive in a certain environment. And so, you know, if we're talking about crops that are going to grow in a certain part of the country, you know, if they're getting the right amount of sunlight and the right amount of rain or irrigation, and, you know, the conditions are just perfect, then those things are going to grow like crazy. Well, we want our culture to continue to improve, and so we want to create an environment of trust. That's really hard in our schools, but you know, integrity and telling the truth and that authentic encouragement, empathy, noticing, remembering, circling back to people, you know, how was your mom's surgery? You know, those kinds of things are genuine, and trust is built on genuine relationships. And that's the opposite of positional authority and positional leadership. And we're all striving to be those servant leaders that, you know, the keys to that are the words that I just said: empathy, integrity, service, trust, you know, telling the truth, being authentic, working really hard. That's all possible. Is it easy? No way. I believe being a servant leader is the hardest type of leadership. Being a positional leader is way easier. Just throw your title around and tell people they have to do it because you said so, and go shut your door and don't worry about how they react to it. That's easier than being a servant leader. But it's so essential that we want to just build these trust relationships, that they know that you have their back, that you genuinely care about them as human beings first and as employees second. All of that's going to make them more open. They're going to be more open to receiving that encouragement and not being cynical about it. They're going to be open to working harder. They're going to be open to staying longer. All of this increases teacher retention. And, you know, they're going to when you invest time in them, whether it's one-on-one conversations, you show interest in them as a human being, you show interest in their growth as a professional, you're accessible, you're visible, you have a predictable mood, they feel supported, they feel heard, you are going to have a school built on strong trust relationships. And that is going to be an excellent culture, and it starts with you. And again, is it easy? No. It is hard and it's exhausting, but it is the best way. It's the way people want to be led, and it can transform your school. And I've mentioned a few times that this is hard and it's exhausting, and that kind of brings us to number 7, which is our final point, and that is to encourage self-compassion. And I would add to that self-care. Because if you really want to do the things that are listed in this episode to make encouragement your superpower and to really elevate the culture at your school, then it's not just about encouraging everyone else. It's about encouraging yourself, cleaning up your self-talk, not running yourself down and being too hard on yourself when you make a mistake, you got to show yourself the same compassion that you offer to other people. And then that means being kind to yourself, the way that you talk to yourself. And, you've got to give yourself grace when things don't go perfectly. And the leaders that I coach, I would say that this is a common problem among leaders that I coach, that, their self-talk is not great. They're too hard on themselves when something goes wrong. And they're not practicing self-care. But, if we want to develop that optimism and that resilience and be able to display that empathy, the only way we can do it is if we're practicing some kind of self-care and being kind to ourselves. And, oh, by the way, if we're doing that, we're modeling that for our teachers. And so none of this is easy, none of it, but all of it is essential if we want that culture to be the reality at our schools. And so the big takeaways from the episode: the 7 ways to turn encouragement into your superpower. Number 1, encourage with authenticity. Number 2, create a culture of appreciation. 3, encourage effort over perfection. 4, be a source of support during tough times. 5, lead by example with positive language. 6, foster strong relationships based on trust. And 7, encourage self-compassion. And I like to end every episode with a call to action. And I would say that in the next week, if you would take 15 minutes, just assess yourself on these 7 points, and then decide which one of them needs the most work, and then take one action to make that better. Okay. I told you at the top of the episode that I want to help you have a better second half of your school year than the first half. And there's 2 different ways that I can help you with that. One is with Thrive Academy, theprivateschoolleader.com/thrive, and an asynchronous online digital course that includes office hours with other leaders live once a week. It can be a game changer for you, just like it's been a game changer for dozens of Thrive Academy students. And it's a way that you can, at your own pace, improve your productivity and improve your work-life blend with boundaries and reconnect with your purpose and get more energized and to have that long and happy and fulfilling career as a private school leader. And another way is to work one-on-one together with me as your leadership coach. And I'd love to do that, and I'd love to talk to you more about that. And you can set up a free 20-minute Zoom call and by checking out theprivateschoolleader.com/coaching. And I want to give you one more gift before we go, and that is the top 6 ways to protect your school from a lawsuit. And this is a 10-page PDF that can help you keep your staff and students safe and help keep your school out of court. Litigation is expensive and time-consuming and stressful and emotional, and this common sense guide will help you be more intentional and proactive when it comes to protecting your school. So you can grab that at theprivateschoolleader.com/lawsuit. Again, that's the top 6 ways to protect your school from a lawsuit at theprivateschoolleader.com/lawsuit. And the show notes for today's episode are at theprivateschoolleader.com/episode 114. And last thing, I would just ask for a favor that if you get value from any episode of this podcast, if you would please just share the link with another leader at your school, another leader in your life, someone you met at a conference, but also share it with a rising leader at your school. We need to raise up the next generation of private school leaders, and you have a good eye for spotting that talent at your school. Share the podcast with them. So forward them the link to the podcast. And so I just want to say thank you. I've been your host, Mark Minkus. I appreciate you. I appreciate all your hard work and that, you're serving those lucky kids and those lucky teachers. And I just appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join me here today. And I'll see you next time right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And until then, always remember to serve first, lead second, and make a difference.